NFL draft season, one of the most exciting times of the year for all NFL fans, where teams have their hopes of finding that gem that can bring their team to the promised land and hold that Lombardi trophy. It's finally upon us. Now, while quarterbacks are usually the talk of the town, and this year is no different, this year's wide receiver class is going to give it a run for its money. In this video, I rank how I see the wide receivers as prospects coming into the draft. Now, I say rank as prospects because that's an important part of this. This is not a ranking of where I think the order of them being drafted in, and I also think a big part of their success will just determine from where they land. What kind of QB they get, what kind of system they get, what kind of development they get. But this is how I rank them as prospects coming into the draft. So, if you like this video, just like the video. And if you want to see any other videos, go ahead and subscribe for me, hit the noti bell. I'm going to be giving a lot more draft content before and after the draft. So, let's get into it. With that said, here's my number one receiver this year. And this caught me off guard, because by no means am I just trying to be different. But I have Malik Nabers as my number one.
Now Carter, does this mean Marvin Harrison is an overrated prospect?
No. I think between him and Harrison, it's basically a pick'em. But if I'm taking a wide receiver within the top 5 picks, I'm grabbing Nabers. Nabers to me has the most potential and highest ceiling of becoming a top 3 receiver in the whole league. He's an insane explosive athlete with great top end speed, after the catch acceleration, really long arms. He's pretty muscular. He's not the tallest, but he still has a great ability to go up and get the ball at the catch point with his body control and showing hands late. But not only is he a phenomenal deep ball receiver, he's extremely quick in the short range, getting in and out and snapping off routes, and he's extremely elusive after the catch. So he will also bring a lot of versatility to an offense instead of just being a pure deep ball guy. I only really see 2 main downsides of him as a prospect. His routes could improve a little as he tends to purely rely on speed, which is doable with him, but if he gets his route running crisp, that is what will elevate him into the top tier receiver. He also has some difficulty with the press, but again, with some technique and work at training camp, he could clean that up for sure. So like I said, I have Malik Nabers as my number one receiver. Now, it didn't take very long to get to what most people consider the number one guy, as he is the safest prospect in this whole draft. Marvin Harrison Jr. is number 2 receiver on my board. See, I think when deciding between these two, there are one of 2 ways that can go. Marvin Harrison is a safer prospect, and I think it's almost guaranteed he'll become a legit number 1 receiver in this league. But I think his ceiling of becoming a top 3 to 5 guy is much more difficult. And I have Nabers as a lower floor, but I think he has the legit potential to get on that Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase kind of receiver level, where he is an actual top receiver in the whole league. Now, Marvin has an extraordinary set of hands, great body control, and he really takes advantage of his height and wingspan that allows him to have one of the best catch radius in the whole class. He also has a masterclass ability of getting off the line versus presses. With the use of his hands, quick feet, and football IQ, it's really hard to jam him. He also has a really refined route running tree that, combined with his quick feet and IQ, allow him to run almost any route and get open, which will translate to the NFL instantly. He will be good right away. His knocks are his pure speed. While he definitely has NFL level speed, he's not a top end burner. It might hurt his ability to create separation off of the elite corners you'll see in the NFL. And it also limits his yak big play ability. But trust, he's going to be an elite NFL receiver that every team would love to add to their roster. So wide receiver number 3 this year is no question Rome Odunze. And honestly, I believe in any other year, Rome would be the number 1 wide receiver taken. He's a legit phenomenal prospect. He also has a phenomenal set of hands, a huge catch radius due to his hand-eye coordination, ability to extend his arms, and elite level body control, especially for someone of that size. He's also a very good route runner with some versatility too. He's a little slower on his comeback routes due to his size, but that's definitely not a deal breaker, and he can get in and out of his breaks very well, and he can also beat you over the top for sure. He doesn't have that true burner speed of Neighbors, and similar to Harrison, that'll limit his yak, and I would also like to see him not let corners get physical with him, especially given his size. He should be the one bullying people. But overall, Rome is definitely another receiver who is worth a top 10 pick, and whatever team gets him will be more than happy. Now, pretty much everyone had those three as the top three, so none of that's a surprise. But now let's get to where it gets a little more complicated. The next two guys I have are actually interchangeable to me, as they are very different types of receivers, and depending on the team structure and needs, I could see a good argument for either one being the fourth guy. But we'll address the one with more upside, who I put up higher up on the list, that is A.D. Mitchell. A.D. Mitchell is a picture-perfect wide receiver. He's tall, he's athletic, he has good length, extremely fast, and twitchy. If you were to design a receiver just physically, A.D. Mitchell is what you want. He also has great body control, especially for someone of that size. He has the quickness and lateral moves to get off the line, and he has great change of direction and separation that allow him to run pretty much any route. He also has great use of his head and shoulders to juke defenders and get that separation, so he doesn't just rely on speed. So not only does he have the physical and route traits, but he also has a great set of hands, and he seems to come down with every ball. He also has the clutch gene, catching multiple game winners and clutch catches the past 2 years at Texas. Now, there are some bad. Most notably, he can look unengaged at times when he knows he's not getting the ball. But hopefully in the NFL, where QBs are better at going through reads and you're not necessarily automatically out of the play if you're not the number one option, he'll be better also, but that's still something you don't want to see as an NFL team. He also lacks some strength, and he isn't great with contested catches, as he's not very aggressive, and he tends to let the ball fall to him instead of going up to get it. So, while there are definitely some stuff that needs to be addressed, he shows great potential, and honestly to me, he is the ideal prospect that everyone thinks Brian Thomas Jr. is. So then my number 5 guy is a very different type of prospect. He's going to be pretty much a slot exclusive guy in the NFL. That's Ladd McConkey. Ladd is an athletic freak in his own way. He has a really quick acceleration, he's really fast off the line and off presses that allow him to be that quick catch security blanket that QBs love and that can help move the chains. He also uses tempo and body mechanics to get defenders off balance. So with that, combined with his burst of speed and elite crisp route running, make him a separation master. Now, his bad is he's not very physical and he's not great with contested catches. Two things that will limit his effectiveness in the middle of the field, which is something as a slot guy, you'll have to play in that middle of the field at least a good amount. So, while I think Ladd is a great prospect, I think he's limited to that slot position, and that's one of the reasons I dropped him below Mitchell. But I do think he is a phenomenal prospect. So, my wide receiver number 6 is definitely a little unorthodox, and I think a lot of people don't rank him on their big boards because he won't be drafted as high. But that's not because of a lack of talent. And remember, I'm not ranking these players on where I think they get drafted. I'm ranking them on their talent as prospects. So, next, I have Jermaine Burton. Burton brings to the field an insane amount of quickness that, along with a variety of releases, allow him to get into all of his routes with ease. He might not have that top-end speed of someone like a Mitchell, Worthy, Thomas, but he has plenty of speed, and he has a great contested jump catcher that still allows him to be an elite deep ball threat. He also brings a great change of direction, flexibility, and body control that, with snapping his feet and hips, allow him to run any route and get that separation. The reason he'll probably drop is because of off-the-field issues. He has some trouble keeping his cool, and he has shown some anger issues. But I do think he is one of the better prospects. I even think you can make an argument he'd be the 4th receiver off the board if he just didn't have those anger issues. And I hope he clears it up because he will be a phenomenal player to watch in the NFL. At number 7, I have Troy Franklin out of Oregon. Franklin brings some excellent traits to the field. He has blazing speed both in vertical sets and with burning past defenders after the catch. He's also demonstrated good ability to snap in and out of routes, proving he has versatility to him besides just being a deep threat. Overall, he's an extremely explosive athlete that you want on the field. So the bad of Franklin, he gets pushed around way too easy. He definitely needs to add some strength and size. Also, he had a very high drop rate last year. Granted, the year before, he didn't, so hopefully it was just a fluke. In the end, due to his lack of strength and physicality, if he's the number 1 receiver on your team and he has those double teams coming, elite strong corners, he's going to be in trouble. But if he's put into a good position where he can just be the number 2, like if the Cowboys take him or if the Bears take him, I think he'll end up being very productive. My next guy is someone who a lot of people will be shocked to see him this late. I'm finally getting to Brian Thomas Jr. The good with Thomas is very obvious. He has a massive frame, top end speed, like top end speed, as we saw with him having the 3rd fastest 40 in this year. And it comes with speed that also has a smooth, effortless stride, and he's surprisingly elusive. But I think the bad with Thomas is pretty bad. He has a very poor, unrefined route tree. He gets pushed off his routes in crowds too easily, something that's alarming for someone with that size. And he had a very high drop rate this year. Thomas is the definition of a project. He only had 1 elite year in college, which is also a nervous sign to me. He had trouble getting off presses his entire college career, which isn't good for a deep vertical threat. But he did show some progress this year compared to his previous years. Listen, I understand why Thomas is such a loved project. He's an athletic, physical specimen, and I do think he'll get drafted higher than I have him rated. But I would be lying if I wasn't scared of the boom or bust potential. I understand this isn't a perfect comp, but I see a lot of similarities with Chase Claypool, a big, deep ball, athletic receiver who should be a phenomenal, great 50-50 guy, but he just never reaches that. But speaking of projects, next I have Keon Coleman. Keon, like Thomas, has a very big frame and is an explosive athlete. He's a former basketball star, which you can tell as he's great at boxing out his defenders, he times his jumps really well, and he wins off the press well, demonstrating great potential as a deep ball threat. He is the definition of a walking highlight reel with some of the catches he makes. Where he struggles is the short and mid-range. He does show flashes of good separation, but his ability to get open is tough, and his route running is limited for sure. Keon has a bunch of really good traits, but he has a lot of work to do if he wants to become a number 1, but he does have the ability of just being a pure deep ball receiver at this point. After 2 pure projects, my top 10 rounds out with a guy who's much closer to a finished player, Roman Wilson. Now, because I say he's a finished player, that doesn't mean he doesn't bring a lot to the table. Roman is pretty short, but he has a very muscular and sturdy frame, and he has elite quickness. He is very good with his sharp cuts and change of direction that create that separation. He has extremely good hands, and he tracks the ball very well, both in traffic and with deep balls. Roman is also a burner, and he has great yak ability. So, that's a lot of good with Wilson, and I really do like him. His bad is just related to his lack of size and strength. His height and short arms will limit his catch radius and his ability to get those contested balls. I think Wilson will end up being a very reliable receiver and probably a steal of this draft. But he lacks that ultimate upside that some of these unpolished projects have. And I think the fact that Wilson will have to stay in the slot most of the time lowers him on the list. But don't get me wrong, almost any team would love to get a Wilson on the second day. My first guy out of the top 10 ends up being the most explosive athlete in the draft. One of the most explosive athletes we've ever seen, Xavier Worthy. Worthy set the NFL Combine record for fastest 40-yard dash. Worthy just doesn't have that straight top-end speed though. His ability to change direction, go in and out of breaks, and elite level body control and balance. Worthy has an ability to perform moves to get past defenders without losing speed or his stride. His athleticism is truly generational. Now, for anyone who doesn't know quite about Worthy, you're probably wondering,
why is he so low on this list? He should be a top 5 receiver.
that's because Worthy's size is a legit problem. He's listed as 5'11", 165. He struggles at the catch point and he gets moved off his routes very easy. He also lets defenders get past his base to break up the catch. Worthy's limitation means he's very unlikely to ever be a number 1, and even a number 2 will be difficult. But don't get me wrong, his game-changing speed will still make him a problem on the field. He might end up having that Steph Curry, Tyreek Hill effect, not necessarily the production, but the effect where the whole field gravitates to him because of how much of a threat he is for a touchdown. And that will make everyone in the offense better. But let's get back to the deep ball, because chicks dig the long ball. Which means Xavier Leggetti is next. This is another project, but he is a guy who has a very good blend of speed and size. He's also demonstrated a great ability to be a vertical threat with his ability to reach the high point with great body control. He also demonstrated his athleticism with a phenomenal yak ability. Now, Leggetti is a very raw route runner, which limits his current ability to translate right away. He also only had one elite year where the coaches put him into a position to be their number 1 receiver, so that always makes you skeptical. Similar to Worthy, if he's put in a system where he can create an impact, he'll be very valuable. But he's definitely a project that'll need some time to refine his skills. On to the second Washington receiver of the day, Jalen Polk. Polk is another guy who has a great big frame and really impressive catch radius that allow him to win a lot of contested catches. And he does a really good job at adjusting and catching bad throws as well. Polk has very quick feet and he uses his head and shoulders well to create that separation and get in and out of his routes. Polk is a very refined, fundamental receiver, but he lacks that top end speed that will end up limiting his upside. I see Polk as someone who will for sure contribute to the NFL offense, especially as a red zone target, but he will never carry an offense. Then the last guy I'm going into a lot of detail with will be Ricky Purcell, another slot receiver who runs routes with excellent body control. He brings precision to his cuts and crisp routes that allow that separation. Ricky also has excellent hands and use of his head and shoulders to get open, but he lacks that top end speed to be a top wide receiver, and he's going to be a 24-year-old rookie, so his upside is definitely limited. Due to his fundamentals and great hands, I think he can contribute right away, but I just can't put him higher than some of these other guys. Now, don't get me wrong. If your team doesn't get one of these receivers, there are definitely more good options. Some of the other receivers I really like in order include Baker, Corley, Walker, Washington, Rice, and McCaffrey. Even after those guys, there are even more. I know we say this every year going into a draft, but this is really a generational type of draft class. So, let me know what you guys thought about the rankings. Who would you put higher? Who would you move lower? Who are some of your steals of the draft? Some of your hidden gems that you like?